Forget everything you think you know about blonde hair trends, because fall 2025 is about to flip the script with a look that's both rebelliously vintage and surprisingly controversial. The hair world is buzzing with whispers about boho blonde, and honestly, it's causing quite the stir among colorists and fashion insiders alike. But here's where it gets controversial. Some critics argue this isn't actually a new trend at all, but rather a brilliant rebranding of what our grandmothers were already doing in the swinging 60s. Welcome to the era of effortlessly imperfect hair that's making perfectionists everywhere absolutely lose their minds. The 60s are back, and they're not playing games. Picture this, scrolling through your feed, and suddenly everyone from Margot Robbie to Sienna Miller looks like they've time-traveled straight from a 1960s music festival. That's the power of boho blonde, a hair color that's simultaneously throwing shade at today's overly processed Instagram perfection, while celebrating the raw, unfiltered beauty of counterculture icons. This Wheaton-toned masterpiece draws its inspiration directly from the revolutionary spirits of the 60s, when creative rebellion wasn't just a hashtag, but a way of life. Think Marianne Faithfull's devil-may-care locks, Jane Fonda's effortlessly chic waves, Edie Sedgwick's perfectly imperfect strands, and Sharon Tate's sun-kissed sophistication. These weren't just hairstyles, they were statements of independence, artistic freedom, and a bold middle finger to conventional beauty standards. And this is the part most people miss. The current fashion runways are practically screaming for this aesthetic comeback. Designers like Chimene Kamali at Chloé, Anthony Vaccarello at Saint Laurent, and Alessandro Michele's vision for Valentino have all embraced flowing bohemian silhouettes, romantic crochet details, and skin-flushing lace that demands hair with the same free-spirited energy. Decoding the boho blonde formula, it's messier than you think. Here's what makes boho blonde genuinely different from your typical salon blonde. It actively rejects perfection. While traditional balayage aims for seamless, Instagram-ready results, boho blonde celebrates beautiful chaos. We're talking caramel ribbons, sandy highlights, and honey-tone dimensions that look like Mother Nature herself decided to play colorist after a few glasses of wine. The magic lies in its deliberately accidental appearance. Imagine spending an entire summer wandering through Mediterranean beaches, letting the sun randomly kiss your hair wherever it pleases, never once worrying about root touch-ups or color correction. The slightly darker natural roots aren't a maintenance mistake. They're an intentional design choice that creates depth and authenticity. But here's where it gets controversial. This low-maintenance look actually requires incredible skill from your colorist to achieve that perfectly imperfect finish. The irony? You're paying premium prices to look like you rolled out of bed with naturally sun-kissed hair. The 2025 plot twist, it's not what you'd expect. Now, before you start planning your 60s costume party, let's talk about how 2025 is revolutionizing this classic look. The modern boho blonde movement is deliberately distancing itself from retro clichés. No more teased emollients or perfectly curled flips that scream vintage costume. Instead, contemporary style icons like Sienna Miller, who's practically the unofficial ambassador of modern bohemian chic, are embracing softer, more natural wave patterns that move with effortless grace. The key innovation: combining these vintage-inspired tones with cutting-edge haircut techniques that bring structure and sophistication to the chaos. Consider the long bob revolution. Celebrities like Suki Waterhouse are proving that boho blonde works brilliantly with sharp, modern cuts that frame the face with architectural precision. Meanwhile, stars like Angèle are pushing boundaries with choppy bob variations that add an edgy urban twist to the romantic color palette. And for those feeling particularly bold, the wet look styling trend, as demonstrated by Candice Swanepoel, creates stunning contrast that makes those honey and sandy highlights absolutely pop under any lighting. The maintenance reality check. Prepare for some truth bombs. Let's address the elephant in the room. Despite all the low-maintenance marketing, achieving authentic boho blonde isn't exactly a DIY weekend project. The visible roots and tonal variations that make this look so appealing require precise placement and expert color knowledge to avoid looking like a grown-out disaster rather than an intentional style choice. However, once you've invested in the initial transformation, the upkeep truly is more forgiving than traditional blonde maintenance routines. Those deliberately imperfect roots mean you can stretch appointments longer, and the multidimensional color palette helps camouflage new growth more naturally than solid blonde techniques. The controversial question everyone's asking. Here's what's sparking heated debates in beauty circles. Is boho blonde actually inclusive, or is it another trend that primarily celebrates one specific hair texture and starting color? Critics argue that achieving this effortless sun-kissed look requires starting with certain hair types and undertones, potentially excluding those with naturally darker or differently textured hair from participating in the trend without significant chemical processing. Additionally, there's growing discussion about whether constantly chasing vintage-inspired trends prevents us from developing genuinely innovative beauty movements that reflect our current cultural moment rather than romanticizing past decades. Your move. Embrace the chaos or stick to the status quo. So here's the million-dollar question that's dividing hair enthusiasts everywhere. Are you ready to trade your perfectly maintained, Instagram-worthy blonde for something that celebrates beautiful imperfection? Or does the idea of intentionally messy hair make your inner perfectionist break out in a cold sweat? The boho blonde movement represents more than just a color trend. It's a philosophical statement about embracing authenticity over artificial perfection, celebrating individual character over cookie-cutter beauty standards, and finding confidence in looking effortlessly undone rather than meticulously crafted. What's your take? Is boho blonde a refreshing return to natural beauty, or just another expensive way to look accidentally gorgeous? Are you team perfectly imperfect, or do you believe some trends are better left in the 60s where they belong? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is just getting started, and something tells me not everyone's going to agree.